I'm going to try and show you how I like to use this stuff. The first time I used it, I had a little bit of trouble with it. Kind of wish somebody was there to show me how to use it. So I'm going to share it with all of you. The first time you use this stuff with your iron, you're going to have to try and figure out what kind of temperature you're going to want to be using on this iron, because if it's too hot, you're going to warp the plastic too much, you're going to melt it, and if it's not hot enough, you won't activate the adhesive. What I did the first time is I took a little bit of it, put a little scrap off, so then I got just like a little piece to play around with. Now here's another thing I didn't realize the first time I used it, because on the instruction sheets for this stuff, there's no mention of it, and you can't see it. And I looked online, you type in SoLite into Google, you don't get a whole lot. I didn't realize why this stuff wasn't sticking, and it's because there's a protective film on the side that has the adhesive. So you're gonna have to get that off. The way I like to get the film off is I take and roll it between my fingers, and then you just pull it apart. Remember which side had that clear plastic on it, because it's kind of tough to tell which side is sticky and which side isn't. The side that has the adhesive on it will be a little bit less shiny. So what I do is I take this piece of plastic and I just put it on my bench here, and I try it. I got to heat it up. I try and stick it to it. Now when you go to shrink the covering later, you're gonna have to turn the heat up a little bit. Here I've got my covering laid out, and I got my wing sitting on top of it. I'm gonna take my hobby knife and I'm just gonna cut around the frame. I'm leaving a couple inches on all sides of it, so I have room to work with it. I'm gonna get that film off, that protective film off. So I'm gonna grab a corner. I'm just gonna work it between my fingers a little bit, get it started. There you go. I've got some of that clear plastic coming. Now here's a little trick. This stuff is going to get really tough to work with static. It's going to try clinging to itself. If you take a towel and try and pull it apart while it's on the towel, the static will go into the towel instead of staying in the plastic. See, it's sticking to my arm actually. See, it's all clinging to me. I don't want that when I'm trying to put this on my wing. I lay it out on this towel. And it's wonderful to work with. Now I got my covering cut out and static free, and I lay it down, adhesive side down. That's the side that the clear plastic came off of. And I fit it over my frame, making sure everything's covered. When you're covering a big surface like this wing here, what I've done is I've already put the covering on this edge over here, this rib at the very end. Then, what you want to do is pull it tight, make sure it's nice and smooth, and then work the exact opposite end. What this is going to do is it's going to keep it stretched out over the whole surface. If you tried to work from the middle out or just work this way, what's going to happen is the heat from the iron is going to start warping it and shrinking it, and by the time you get halfway through, it's going to be a wrinkled, bubbled up mess. If you start with it smooth, your finished product is going to look a whole lot better. In keeping with the same idea, I'm going to do the leading edge and then the trailing edge also. I want to make sure that the whole outside is going to stay put. Now once you've completed covering the frames, you're going to have to trim it around the edges, because right now it's overhanging a bit. That's fine. So you just take a straight razor and cut along the frame. When I'm trimming, I like to have the razor come down while I'm cutting. That way it's not pulling the covering off of the frame as I'm trimming it. Now I'm just finishing up. Okay, I have my ailerons covered now. And this is a very thin part. You're going to want to cover both sides before you want to shrink any covering, because it'll tend to pull at one side or the other and twist things, so you want to shrink both sides together. I haven't trimmed the covering off of this yet, and I thought I would demonstrate how I like to go about doing that. I take a straight razor blade, and I'll normally start in the middle of the surface just to get it started there, and I'll just work the razor lightly across the edge, and it trims the excess plastic off. And that way we can have a nice, neat, clean finish when you're done. And there's still going to be a little bit of the covering that isn't stuck down real well on these edges, because I don't want to cut it right down to where it's stuck down, because then you run the risk of cutting into the wood and making your finish look messy. So what I'll do later is I'll take my sealing iron and make sure all of the edges are down nice and tight. If you notice, I had wrapped my covering over the edge a little bit. So you can see over here on this one, the covering is attached along this edge. I only did that along the long edges because if I wanted to do it along these edges and also this edge on the end, I would have a nasty little fold here and it wouldn't turn out so nice. So what I'll do is I'll cut along these edges, and then once I'm done, I'll fold this edge over and it'll be much neater. So you can seal those edges right down. You don't want any loose edges that'll start peeling up with all the air going by it. These ends, they're not trimmed yet, but I want to stick them down over the edge. I'll trim those as well. Now it's all trimmed and covered, and you probably notice there's some wrinkles. It doesn't really look nice and smooth in those open areas. What I'm going to do is I have my heat turned up a little bit. Don't want it too high because it will melt through. And then just very lightly go over it. There's still a little bit of a wrinkle in there, but we can get that out. You don't really want to touch the plastic too much. Just going right over it, just letting the heat come off the iron should be enough to shrink it. If you do touch it, just touch it with the edge. Don't let the whole surface of the iron hit it. That's better. Nice and smooth now. Do the other side. There's a nice smooth finish. And hopefully, once you've shrunk both sides, it'll lay nice and flat on the table.